I was the black sheep, the one who abandoned the family's luxury empire for music. When my father died, my sister and her husband thought they had won everything. The iconic Hotel Solari. But they didn't know the hotel was built on a crumbling lie. And I was the only one who held the proof. They humiliated me publicly, thinking I was weak. They didn't realize I wasn't fighting for the inheritance. I was fighting for the debt. Prepare yourself for a story of ambition, structural fraud, and a sister's perfect revenge, played out in front of 50 wealthy guests. My name is Alexandra, and to my family, I am the definition of irresponsibility. My sister, Daniela, and her husband Victor were the opposite. The golden heirs, dressed in perfectly cut suits and always ready to quote profit margins. At 22, I exchanged the promise of taking over the Hotel Solari, a beachfront luxury icon my father built, for the unpredictability of music production. They saw me as a deserter. I saw myself as someone who chose authenticity. While the family publicly mourned my lack of vision in hotel management, my music production holding company, quietly registered under a pseudonym, generated profits that made the Hotel Solari's payroll look like pocket change. But, to Daniela and Victor, I was just the artist playing with headphones. The Hotel Solari was the jewel in the crown. Its neoclassical facade and terraces overlooking the ocean were frequently featured in travel magazines. No one, except perhaps me and my father, knew how rotten the skeleton of that giant was. 5 years ago, during a rushed expansion, my father, desperate to save money and hide growing debt, used a low-quality foundation concrete. The project was a structural time bomb, requiring emergency repairs that my father covered up with toxic accounting additives. I discovered this when my father, already ill and tormented by anxiety, asked me to take a look at some boring technical reports. There was the secret: engineering reports condemning the foundation and estimating security fines and repair costs exceeding 70 million reais or dollars. My father died with this secret in his chest. The reading of the will, a month after the funeral, was held in the grand ballroom of the Hotel Solari, a touch of staging that Daniela and Victor organized. 50 guests gathered, partners, longtime family friends, and the local press. It was less a mourning and more a social event. I sat in a corner, watching Daniela and Victor, who looked like they were on a stage. The lawyer, a pompous man named Dr. Alcantara, cleared his throat and read the final section in a solemn voice. The will was clear. Due to her known lack of interest in family business and her financial irresponsibility, I formally disinherit my daughter Alexandra Viana, leaving the control and entirety of the Hotel Solari to my eldest daughter, Daniela Viana, and her husband Victor. Daniela let out a forced sigh of relief and looked at me with calculated pity. Victor gave a winning, shark-like smile. The room erupted in whispers. The lawyer continued. As a gesture of minimal affection, Ms. Alexandra Viana will receive the lump sum of 50,000 reais. An insult. The amount wouldn't even cover my studio rent for a year. It was the price they thought my silence was worth. Daniela, dressed in elegant black, approached me with a local newspaper's camera focused on her face. She hugged me with the coldness of marble. "Alex," she whispered loudly enough for the guests to hear. "Dad did what was best for his legacy. You always knew you weren't cut out for this. At least with those 50,000 you can invest in your niche music." Victor, with his hands on Daniela's shoulders, added with a predatory smile, "Daniela and I will protect Hotel Solari, Alexandra. That's what responsibility is for." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. The humiliation didn't touch me, because I had already grieved for my father and my family a long time ago. All that remained was calculation. I looked at them, then at the ballroom's faux marble columns, at the cracks I knew lay beneath the paint. "Yes," I replied with chilling calm. "You are very responsible. I trust your judgment. I hope Hotel Solari brings you everything you deserve." I left the ballroom while Daniela was already giving an interview about the new era of responsibility and growth for the family. I didn't go home. I drove to the nearest coffee shop with Wi-Fi. Revenge, to be perfect, required the same precision I used in mixing a complex track. The plan began 6 months before my father's death. When I discovered the full extent of the fraud and learned he was being pressured by Daniela and Victor to change the will, threatening to expose the engineering failures, I decided to act. My father, already weak, would not fight. I knew that the European Central Bank was acquiring the debt portfolio of the German bank that financed Hotel Solari, due to the creditor's impending bankruptcy. It was a complex, high-risk transaction. Exactly the kind of thing Victor and Daniela, focused only on the facade of luxury, would never notice. With the money from my holding company and the help of a trusted lawyer in Geneva, I spent months quietly buying the Hotel Solari's mortgage titles and structural debt. I didn't buy the hotel itself. I bought the debt, which was 10 times its market value. Called my Swiss lawyer. "Have we confirmed the transfer of ownership of the principal debt, Alexandra?" "Yes," I replied, looking at my bank account, where the 50,000 reis from the will had just been deposited. "The holding company, the silent voice, is the new creditor of Hotel Solari. And the celebration party for your siblings' inheritance?" he asked. I smiled, taking a sip of my coffee. "It will happen in 3 days. And the new creditor needs to attend. I want the demolition to be the first news of their new era." 3 days later, the new era party was in full swing. The Hotel Solari was lit up in ostentatious blue and gold. Daniela and Victor, glowing with self-satisfaction, were mingling with 50 of the city's most influential social and business figures. They were basking in the glory of an inheritance they believed they had successfully stolen. I arrived precisely at 9 p.m. I wasn't invited, but as the principal creditor, I didn't need one. I wore a simple black dress, understated against the glittering crowd. My presence instantly killed the music volume and silenced the room. Daniela was the first to approach me, her smile freezing instantly. "What are you doing here, Alex? This is a private party. You don't live here anymore." "I know," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "I came for the celebration. The celebration of the new creditor. Or perhaps, the celebration of the end of the Viana legacy." Victor stepped in, his face hostile. "Get out, Alexandra. We won. You were disinherited. You have no legal standing here." I ignored him. I looked directly at the crowd, the city's elite, who were now rapt with attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," I addressed them. "You are celebrating the beginning of the Viana family's new era. But I'm here to announce the true beginning. The moment the Hotel Solari finally pays its debts." Daniela laughed nervously, turning to the guests. "She's drunk, don't mind her. She's just bitter." "Am I, Daniela?" I pulled a pristine folder from my small clutch bag, sealed with the insignia of my Swiss legal team. "Your late father's will was a formality. The problem, Victor, is that the Hotel Solari's structural debt is not a formality. It's an imminent danger." I walked to a wall, tapping a decorative panel I knew was covering a structural flaw. For years, Dad covered up the foundation failure using fraudulent accounting and inadequate materials. The cost of fixing the mandatory structural repairs, plus the accumulated penalties for safety violations that the city will impose next week, totals over 70 million reis. Victor sneered. "Even if that were true, the hotel is ours. And the bank holds the debt, not you, poor little musician." "The bank did hold the debt, Victor," I corrected him, pulling out the crucial document. "But the bank went into high-risk asset bankruptcy 4 months ago. And I, through my holding company, the silent voice, purchased the entirety of that debt portfolio. I am not your bitter sister. I am your principal creditor. And now, I am the legal owner of the foreclosure rights of the Hotel Solari." Daniela gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. The guests began to murmur loudly, their champagne glasses frozen mid-air. The celebration had turned into a criminal investigation scene. "You sold us a structural time bomb, Victor and Daniela," I said, my voice cold and precise. "You used a forged will to acquire a property you knew was worthless and financially toxic, just to keep the facade of wealth. That's fraud, misrepresentation of assets, and financial misconduct. The Hotel Solari is mine by right of debt. Victor tried to reach me, but two of the hotel's own security guards, who were secretly on my payroll, blocked his path. You can't do this. We're family, he shouted. You destroyed the family when you manipulated our sick father into signing that will, I countered. You were so focused on cutting me out of the wealth that you missed the crucial detail. The wealth was the biggest debt. I saved you both from your own greed. I called the authorities this morning. The city inspection and the police are on their way to investigate the structural fraud and the fraudulent will. Daniela collapsed onto a chair, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. You ruined us. You were supposed to be irrelevant. Irrelevant people don't own 70 million reis in debt titles, I finished. I placed the foreclosure document, signed and sealed, on the table. The Hotel Solari will be demolished next month. And its debt is now yours. I turned and walked out, leaving the chaos, the ruin, and the sound of distant sirens behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I didn't win the inheritance. I exposed the crime. The demolition of the Hotel Solari would be the last piece of news of the Viana family's old era. The Hotel Solari fell, and with it, the pride of the Viana family. Alexandra proved that the greatest wealth is not in the assets we inherit, but in the secrets we choose to keep. Would you have sold the debt immediately, or would you have waited for the perfect moment like Alexandra, to expose the betrayal publicly? Let me know your revenge strategy in the comments below. If you love stories about precise justice and shocking family twists, hit the like button and subscribe to Dramatic Paths.